This is Indian Country Today.
Esquili, thank you for joining us. I'm Patty Tholohungva. Here are the headlines for Friday, December 18th. President-elect Joe Biden is making history as he nominates New Mexico Representative Deb Haaland to be the next Interior Secretary. This makes Representative Haaland the first Native American to be tapped to lead the powerful federal agency in its 171-year history. In a tweet, she said, "A voice like mine has never been a cabinet secretary or at the head of the Department of Interior. Growing up in my mother's Pueblo household made me fierce. I'll be fierce for all of us, our planet, and all of our protected land. I am honored and ready to serve." Tribal leaders, along with Democratic figures like North Dakota's state representative Ruth Buffalo, says Haaland's appointment brings hope.
Every administration, it seems as though tribal sovereignty is on the chopping block. And so I'm hopeful that we will continue to move forward in a good way. And not only tribal sovereignty will be protected, but, a lot more protections in place for all people in our country. So I think it's monumental in that it's, an American Indian woman. So it's just a glimmer of hope during these challenging COVID-19 times that we're in.
Twyla Baker, president of the MHA Nations College, says Haaland's experience will be invaluable.
I have sort of a selfish interest, I suppose, in Deb being nominated to the position of Secretary of the Department of the Interior, in that my own tribe is struggling with the Department of Interior right now. As we speak, we are in the courts fighting with them, with the current administration.
Haaland, who is Laguna, first made political history in 2018. She was one of the first 2 Native American women elected to Congress. She is a progressive voice in New Mexico's congressional delegation, which sent its first all-female U.S. House delegation to Congress. And before that, Haaland became the first Native American woman to be elected to lead a state party. Haaland's own agenda in Congress mirrors some of the Interior's responsibilities.
I'm the vice chair of the full committee on natural resources, the House Natural Resources Committee. I'm the chair of the subcommittee on national parks, forests, and public lands. Right now, public lands emit close to 25% of the carbon emissions, the total carbon emissions of our country. And that's because this administration has gone hog wild with leasing off land to the gas and oil industry. At the same time, renewable energy production on public lands has declined.
She campaigned on a progressive agenda that prioritizes healthcare, public education, and the environment. Haaland says those issues span the interests of her constituents and Indigenous Americans nationwide. Clara Pratt is the Tribal Engagement Director for the Biden-Harris Transitional Team. She says she's looking forward to Haaland's confirmation because historically, the departments had a strained relationship with tribal nations.
I think she's just going to knock it out of the park, and I couldn't be more excited for the opportunity for her to be there, what it represents to all of us as Native people, and what it represents to the country in terms of the abilities that we have. And there really is no level to which we should limit ourselves. There isn't a spot where we should limit ourselves and say, oh, well, I couldn't do that, because folks like Deb and others have certainly broken many, many glass ceilings.
And the Native American political director for the Democratic National Committee, Teresa Sheldon, says half the battle is educating politicians.
I have full faith knowing that having a Native at the cabinet is going to have change a lot of thought processes and realize there's so many better ways to do things, and you don't have to do things just the good old way because it's always been that way.
Terry Rambler, the chairman of the San Carlos Apache tribe in Arizona, made this statement. Our elders have always said that the agency officials in Washington, D.C., thousands of miles away from the San Carlos Apache Reservation, make decisions that impact us but have no idea who we are or what is important to us. Now there will finally be an Interior Secretary that comes from us, knows our struggles, and truly understands the importance of the government-to-government relationship. We urge the U.S. Senate to confirm Deb Haaland for Interior Secretary for the good of the country and for the next 7 generations. Haaland's Senate confirmation hearing will take place in February. And those are the headlines from Indian Country Today for Friday, December 18th. I'm Patty Thalahungva. Coming up, a deeper look at what the appointment of Deb Haaland will mean to the Department of the Interior. After President-elect Joe Biden pledged to have the most diverse candidate in history and one that would reflect the country's people, tribal leaders and organizations started tweeting, posting, and sharing letters of support to encourage Biden to name Representative Deb Haaland to the position of Secretary of the Department of Interior. Well, history is now made. Biden did just that. Joining us today to talk about this announcement is Holly Cook Mararro. She is a partner at the Spirit Rock Consulting, and since 2001, Holly has worked with tribes as a federal lobbyist. Welcome, Holly.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's good to see you.
So, Holly, just how big is this announcement to Indian Country?
The significance, the symbolism of Deb Haaland's nomination, and I spent a lot of the day yesterday, I think like so many, not just Native Americans, but the Native women of this country who are so proud to see Deb step up and join the president's cabinet. And so I don't know that there's been a more monumental political event happening for us. Really the joy that was reflected when Congresswoman Davids and Congresswoman Haaland were elected was tremendous. And then to see Deb Haaland go through what was somewhat of a bruising nomination process, which is, not always very transparent, but really, I think the importance and the significance cannot be overstated to Indian Country. And we have such high hopes for Deb. And this is not just Deb joining the cabinet, but it's as Interior Secretary. And so the irony is rich there, but to see a Native American that will be in charge of our public lands, in charge of Indian affairs, and leading that department, I think we all are still in our celebration, but still getting our head around that we will have an actual seat at the cabinet table. And so for all the times that we say, you know what, we want a seat at the table, we have a seat at the cabinet table. This is the highest levels of our nation's government, and Congresswoman Haaland, Secretary Haaland, will be there too.
And in this position, she is going to oversee the Bureau of Indian Affairs. What improvements do you see her making with this agency?
We have seen a clear lack of consultation with tribes on initiatives coming out of the Department of Interior over the last 4 years. And I know Congresswoman Haaland has said that is something she will work on. I know that she will certainly work in coordination with the President-elect Biden's plan for tribal nations, which they put out last fall, shortly before the election, and that contains a number of initiatives in there and commitments to Indian Country. So I think broadly that can provide us with an idea of what Secretary nominee Haaland will be carrying out there in the Bureau of Indian Affairs in coordination with the yet unknown Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs.
And President-elect Joe Biden has said that he is going to reestablish the Tribal Leaders White House annual gathering. And so again, when those events took place, he had his cabinet members meet with tribal leaders. And once she's confirmed, she will be that cabinet leader meeting with tribes. Give us an idea of what that kind of meeting is going to be like for tribal leaders.
Well, the fact that we have a Native American woman sitting at the table as representing the department, the highest Native American we usually see at those meetings is our Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs. And well, we had, Mike Connors, who served as the deputy secretary in the Obama administration, certainly was a big part of those as well. So I think it's going to be an entirely new dynamic. That this isn't, when we see Deb Haaland now, when tribal leaders come to DC and we see Deb Haaland, this isn't, this is a cabinet member that we will have the opportunity to meet with and to talk about with our issues, in addition to what is going to be a very significant and comprehensive portfolio that doesn't just include Indian affairs. So that dynamic, all of Indian country will be looking forward to seeing Secretary Haaland in her new role, both at the annual gathering and in her role when the Interdepartmental Council is reestablished as well, which was also a commitment of the Biden-Harris team.
There are so many tribes who are matrilineal, and it's natural for women to have leadership roles within their tribal nations. Is this appointment kind of a reflection on that and finally giving credence to women as, leaders?
That is a great point. In seeing the Deb, Congresswoman Haaland, Congresswoman Davids win their elections, and Congresswoman Haaland in particular, she kind of worked her way through the process, which we haven't always seen with our Native candidates. Congresswoman Haaland, she volunteered with the party, and then she became the state party chair, and was instrumental over the last 10 years. New Mexico has certainly trended. It's considered a more solidly blue state now, but 15 years ago, it was much more of a transitional, and her seat in particular was a much more of a transitional seat. So, but it has trended blue. She was part of that as state party chair. She ran for lieutenant governor in the state of New Mexico, so was on a statewide ballot. This is, the rise and the leadership of women's voices. And Congresswoman Haaland is particularly fine-tuned. She was a single mother, going to law school, raising a child on her own, with limited financial resources. And those kind of struggles, Indian country knows. We are familiar with those. And certainly, so that being part of the rise of matrilineal voices and that role in our societies, yes, I think this is a terrific reflection of the role that women play in tribal communities.
Well, one issue that she certainly has brought a lot of attention to, she and Representative Sharice Davids, is the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women. And you've done a lot of work in that area as well. So, today, more people are aware of it. More states have created task force when it comes to looking into these cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women. That kind of perspective that she brings, we're hearing a lot from tribal leaders saying she understands what it's like to live on a reservation and she understands those challenges. So before we go, one last thought on any kind of change that she can bring immediately to the Department of Interior.
Well, we have the establishment of the task force. I am hopeful that we will see the continuation of that. There are structural pieces we still need to work on in terms of ensuring that our missing and murdered Indigenous women are not invisible. And having Congresswoman Haaland, Secretary to be at the helm of Interior, will be critical in that. And she knows this issue very well. And as a lawyer, she's also familiar with the legal avenues and parts of this that through the administration, we can have a stronger effort at fighting this epidemic. I do want to mention just a bit about the timeline for the transition. I know Indian country will be very curious as to when she will actually take the helm at the department. And as you all know, January 20th is at noon. We're counting down the days. The inauguration will take place, and President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris will assume their roles and authority. The confirmation process then will begin immediately, and we can expect the confirmation hearing to take place in early to mid-February.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Holly Cook Mararro.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we'll be right back with more historic news, and this time from Taos Pueblo. This is a week of history, with Deb Haaland being the first Native American tapped to lead the Interior Department, and she is from Laguna, Pueblo. And there's more Pueblo history. 50 years ago, the Nixon administration signed legislation returning Blue Lake to the Taos Pueblo. Mark Trahant has our story.
The White House understood the symbolism. The United States was returning land to Taos Pueblo, land that everyone acknowledged had been illegally taken for a national forest in 1906. In past years, the solution would have been to write a check, but the Pueblo, for nearly a century, insisted that the land be returned. Gilbert Suazo Sr. was in a youth society that represented the Pueblo. As a young man, he traveled to Washington and was present at that White House ceremony. Why is this story so important?
Well, thinking back now and having some experience on the Washington scene and other things, I realize now how complicated that it would have been, must have been, but yet, our people went forward with it. And like right now, I feel like thinking back, it's almost like impossible for it to have happened with the opposition that was there. And thankfully, we didn't think like that at the time. All we were interested in was we were going to get that land back one way or another.
An April 17, 1970 memo from Leonard Garment to President Richard Nixon made the case for the return of Blue Lake to the Taos Pueblo. In 1906, the president signed a proclamation making 130,000 acres of this area a national forest. The Indians have contested this ever since. The Indian Claims Commission and the Justice Department reached the conclusion in 1965 that the United States took said lands without compensation. Garment wrote that over the years the issue snowballed and it had become the single specific Indian issue and of such major symbolic importance. To be candid, the question before you is not what happens to the bill, Garment wrote. The answer seems to be little chance. The question, however, is what position you as president should take for both moral and political reasons. That moral argument won the day, and Richard Nixon signed the bill into law on December 15, 1970. This is a bill that represents justice, Nixon said, because the bill also involves respect for religion. Those of us who know something about the background of the first Americans realize that long before any organized religion came to the United States, there was this place of worship. We restore that.
Many of our generations, they don't know the story. So what I've done myself personally is to try to keep the history alive and the stories alive. I have a number of PowerPoint presentations that I do from time to time when invited, and like this evening for Tiwa language class, I'm going to be doing a presentation, and I've kind of tailored it to include like the Indian names for the places that we're talking about, because I want them to know, Blue Lake is a non-Indian name. We have our own Indian name for it. I want them to know what that name is. Ochetsolmo. And the short meaning of that is the lake that is blue. And then Ochetsolmo too, that means it's the big house or the big dwelling place at Blue Lake. There's another name. There's different names that we have, just like anything else. usually don't have just one name. Many of these are like spiritual or cultural names that we have for the place.
In Phoenix, Mark Trahant, Indian Country Today.
And finally, we leave you on this Friday with 12 Days of Native Christmas produced by Vision Maker Media. And on behalf of all of us here at Indian Country Today, have a great weekend. And remember, take care of yourselves. Your life is precious. I'm Patty Thalahungva. Join us again on Monday.
First day of Christmas, my true love gave to me, hey-oh-hey-ho, a blanket for my teepee, hey-oh-hey-ho. On the second day of Christmas, my true love gave to me, hey-oh-hey-ho, 2 moccasins and a blanket for my teepee, hey-oh-hey-ho. On the third day of Christmas, my true love gave to me, hey-oh-hey-ho, 3 beaded bags, 2 moccasins, and a blanket for my teepee, hey-oh-hey-ho. On the fourth day of Christmas, my true love gave to me, hey-oh-hey-ho, 4 ribbon shirts, 3 beaded bags, 2 moccasins, and a blanket for my teepee, hey-oh-hey-ho. On the 5th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me, hey-oh-hey-ho, 5 turquoise rings, 4 ribbon shirts, 3 beaded bags, 2 moccasins, and a blanket for my teepee, hey-oh-hey-ho. On the 6th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me, hey-oh-hey-ho, 6 singers singing, 5 turquoise rings, 4 ribbon shirts, 3 beaded bags, 2 moccasins, and a blanket for my teepee, hey-oh-hey-ho. On the 7th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me, hey-oh-hey-ho, 7 salmon swimming, 6 singers singing, 5 turquoise rings, 4 ribbon shirts, 3 beaded bags, 2 moccasins, and a blanket for my teepee, hey-oh-hey-ho. On the 8th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me, hey-oh-hey-ho, 8 archers aiming, 7 salmon swimming, 6 singers singing, 5 turquoise rings, 4 ribbon shirts, 3 beaded bags, 2 moccasins, and a blanket for my teepee, hey-oh-hey-ho. On the 9th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me, hey-oh-hey-ho, 9 planters planting, 8 archers aiming, 7 salmon swimming, 6 singers singing, 5 turquoise rings, 4 ribbon shirts, 3 beaded bags, 2 moccasins, and a blanket for my teepee, hey-oh-hey-ho. On the 10th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me, hey-oh-hey-ho, 10 dancers dancing, 9 planters planting, 8 archers aiming, 7 salmon swimming, 6 singers singing, 5 turquoise rings, 4 ribbon shirts, 3 beaded bags, 2 moccasins, and a blanket for my teepee, hey-oh-hey-ho. On the 11th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me, hey-oh-hey-ho, 11 eagles eagles soaring, 10 dancers dancing, 9 planters planting, 8 archers aiming, 7 salmon swimming, 6 singers singing, 5 turquoise rings, 4 ribbon shirts, 3 beaded bags, 2 moccasins, and a blanket for my teepee. Hey-a-way, hey-a-ho. On the 12th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me. Hey-a-way, hey-a-ho. 12 weavers weaving, 11 eagles soaring, 10 dancers dancing, 9 planters planting, 8 archers aiming, 7 salmon swimming, 6 singers singing, 5 turquoise rings, 4 ribbon shirts, 3 beaded bags, 2 moccasins, and a blanket for my teepee. Hey-a-way, hey-a-ho.
Ooh, man, am I out of breath.
Times you got to take a stand, just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.
Indian Country Today is recorded at the Phoenix Indian School Visitor Center in Phoenix, Arizona.
This is Indian Country Today.